Great. Good morning, everybody. How we doing? It is so good to see you all here today. My name is Woody Little. I'm with the Last Chance Alliance, which has convened this lobby day today with our member organizations, including the Center for Biological Diversity, Consumer Watchdog, Fossil Free California, the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment, Communities for a Better Environment, the Climate Center, Food and Water Watch, 350 Bay Area Action, many more. It is so great to see so much energy and enthusiasm here today to make polluters pay. After years of tireless advocacy and organizing, as well as leadership from many of the legislators who are standing with us here today, we're finally turning the tide against big oil's influence in Sacramento. So give it up. We are here today to seize that opening and pass a package of 6 key bills to hold polluters accountable and protect our communities from deadly oil and gas pollution. We're also here to call for an end to all fossil fuel subsidies in the state budget, including the Water's Edge election, and for full funding to be restored to the Displaced Oil and Gas Worker Fund. Yes, and we're gonna do it. In short, we're here to push back against big oil's influence in Sacramento, and I'll turn it over now to some of the key leaders on these bills to explain exactly how we're gonna do just that. So first up, I'll pass it to Senator Menjivar, the author of SB 1497. Give it up.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful day, right? Let's make polluters pay today, because in just a few hours, I'm going to go to Budget Sub 3 on Health and Human Services. And I have to decide where we need to make cuts for things for children, families, foster care, older Californians. You know why? Because we're in a deficit. You know what we're also doing in the past couple years? Invested approximately $9 billion to pay for what these polluters have done to California. And that's on our tax-paying dollars. So instead, to address the terrible cuts we have to do this year in this deficit, let's be creative in bringing revenues in. And that's what SB 1497 is looking to do. To assess a fee on the damage of the top polluters have caused in California, 1 billion metric tons of CO2 emission in California. And I love this analogy, not that I really love it, but imagine driving a vehicle, 25 miles per hour, or gallon, 25 gallon, around the circumference of the earth 134 million times. That's how much they're emitting into our atmosphere. So we want to make sure they're paying, they're putting up their front, because it feels like I'm at a group dinner. I ordered a salad, everyone ordered a steak meal, and I'm having to pay the same amount as the person who paid for the steak meal. So we want to make sure it's equitable, it's not falling on the backs of our communities who are most vulnerable. So let's make polluters pay. Let's support SB 1497.
Thank you, Senator Menjivar, so much for your leadership and for those remarks. I'll pass it over to Assemblymember Friedman to talk about AB 3155, another crucial bill. So give it up.
Good morning. I am so thrilled to see so much enthusiasm and so much determination standing behind me. People who understand what's at stake, human lives, and know that our health is more important than the profits of a company, right? It is a fact that we have oil facilities all across California. We're a major oil producing state. It's also a fact that living in very close proximity to one of these facilities can make you ill. It shouldn't be this way. An oil well in your neighborhood or across from your child's school shouldn't mean that your child is just naturally going to be more at risk of cancer, and yet that's where we are. But when that very well-known link is taken in court, when someone whose child has gotten one of these ranges of well-known health impacts because of an oil facility near their home or near their school, it's very hard. It's very hard in court to make that case. It's very hard for that oil facility to be held responsible, to help pay for that medical care, to help mitigate the damage that their facility caused. And yet, that's what happens. The risks are shocking. We have 5.5 million Californians who live within a mile of one or more gas wells, and 1/3 of Californians live in areas that are the most burdened by environmental pollution. That's because in California, over 28,000 operational oil and gas wells are located within 3,200 feet of a hospital, home, school, or other sensitive receptor. My bill, AB 3155, is a revolutionary bill to hold those oil drillers accountable for their irresponsibility by refusing to use the most up-to-date technology to keep people safe. You remember years ago, there was another product that was making people safe. The makers of cigarettes claimed for many years that their products were safe. In fact, they even claimed that they were healthy. At the very time when they had evidence, scientific evidence, showing the link between cancer and tobacco. But when people would go into court because of a tobacco-related cancer or other illness, the very highly paid lawyers of those tobacco companies would say, but they're a little overweight. But their great aunt had cancer. But, to put those doubts into the minds of the jury. And that's exactly what happens today. In fact, it's what happened in my committee 2 weeks ago when we brought this bill up. Oil industry lawyers sat at a table and they said to the teenager who had reproductive cancer and asthma sitting next to me at the table, but maybe her family has a history of cancer. Maybe she was eating too many fatty foods. They were saying all of these things. Well, this bill flips that script on its head. It says we were going to recognize the known link between living next to a facility with outdated materials, outdated technology, and the risk of getting one of these diseases. And we're going to start with that. And now, oil company, you're going to have to work your way backwards, but the presumption now is on you. Now, that's fair, and that's reasonable, and that's centering victims rather than corporate profits. Now, the oil industries have an out. They have an out in our bill. All they have to do is install the latest and best technology on those wells. If they do that, the presumption is no longer there. This is meant to encourage those companies to spend those pennies to install those filters. Install the filters, act responsibly. But if you don't, we will hold you accountable. And that's what this bill does, and that's why it is reasonable, and that's why I hope that everybody out there advocates and supports for AB 3155. Thanks so much for all of your activism and advocacy.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Friedman. Give it up again. Next up, we've got Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, the author of AB 2716. So welcome up.
Good morning. How are we feeling today? Somebody asked me at the beginning of this year's legislative session, what can we do to advance our climate goals in a down budget year? And my answer was pretty simple. We can finally make the polluters pay. It's not the people's responsibility to clean up the mess that they've been creating for decades. In my district, we have the largest urban oil field in the country, the Baldwin Hills Inglewood oil field. And the people who live around it, they die sooner, lower life expectancies, higher rates of heart conditions, higher rates of respiratory conditions, higher rates of cancer, higher rates of childhood asthma. For decades, communities have been paying the cost of this frontline drilling. And it's time to change that cost calculation. We saw a report this last year that there are many, many wells across the state that are doing less than 15 barrels a day. The industry calls them stripper wells, which I think is an important name because they are stripping our communities of their livelihood. They're stripping us of our life expectancy. Even more so, they're not even financially lucrative. And when I talked to the oil industry, which I don't often do, about these stripper wells, they told me the environmental impact is the same for low-producing wells and high-producing wells. So why are we allowing these low-producing wells to even exist? You're not lowering my gas prices. You're not lowering my cost of living. You're not helping us transition to our clean and sustainable future. You're killing us for nothing. And the reason they're doing it is because it costs more to clean it up. And they don't want to clean it up. So we decided that we're going to change that cost calculation. If you've been operating a stripper well within the health setback zone for 2 years straight and you want to continue running it for less than 15 barrels a day, the community needs $10,000 a day for you to keep that well active. So you've got two choices. You can either pay to clean it up, or you can put that money back in the community to make up for the harm that you've done for decades. That's AB 2716. We're moving it through the legislature, but we can't move it by ourselves. I didn't come up with this idea alone. It happened in frontline communities. It happened with frontline communities. So I hope all of you who are here today, all of you who are in this fight with us, stay in this fight with us, because we've got to take this bill, get it out of appropriations, get it out of the state assembly, and get it all the way to the governor's desk. Thank you.
And we're going to do it. Yes. All right, next up, we've got Assemblymember Greg Hart, the author of AB 1866, another crucial bill, so give it up.
Well, it's a good day in the morning when I join my colleagues, Laura Friedman and Isaac Bryan, and all of you to talk about really important issues that affect all of our health and safety, making the polluters pay for the externalities that they have introduced through their business model on the taxpayers and the citizens of the state of California. My bill, 1866, will make the oil companies that are operating idle oil wells throughout the state of California and clean those up and plug them for the right thing to do to protect health and safety and to take care of the liability that is growing on California taxpayers by their inaction. The number of idle oil wells in the state has increased in the past 10 years, despite the oil companies saying that they're working on the problem. We had the first hearing on this bill, and one of the opponents of the bill literally said, why would you mess with a program that is working? If the definition of working is more idle wells are increasing over time and that there is a century-long path to plug these leaking idle oil wells, that is not working in my definition. And that's why we need legislation to make the polluters pay, to get them in line with what is a normal business practice everywhere else. When you're finished doing your messy business, you clean it up so the taxpayers don't have to do that job for you. There's too many examples. In my district, 100 years ago, the first offshore oil wells were drilled in Summerlin, California. At that time, the technology was you stuffed rags and pieces of wood into those wells and walked away. We're paying for those mistakes and those business practices today. State taxpayers are on the hook for millions of dollars to try and plug those wells. We want to stop that from happening going forward. We want the folks who are operating these oil wells, while they have the money to pay, to fix those wells, to stop the leaking methane, to stop the pollution of groundwater, and to do what is responsible and right, and we can expect nothing more. All we need is your help and activism to get these bills through to the governor's desk, and I'm sure he will recognize the importance and the value of making sure that the oil companies that operate in California are protecting taxpayers from their mistakes, and at the same time, we're creating jobs for the people who are in that industry, good-paying, high-paying jobs to plug the wells and protect our environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Hart. And then last but not least, we have Luis Martinez with Fossil Free California to speak about the importance of this fight. Welcome, Luis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Luis Martinez, and I am the campaign's organizer for Fossil Free California. We're working to divest the California state pensions, CalPERS, and CalSTRS of their fossil fuel investments through Senate Bill 252. CalPERS and CalSTRS invest billions of dollars in fossil fuel companies who have underperformed financially within the past 10 years, thus risking the retirement dollars that state workers and public school teachers have across the state have earned for their retirement. In addition to this, the fossil fuel companies under the CalSTRS and CalPERS portfolio have over 45,000 active and idle wells throughout the state, disproportionately polluting the land, air, and water of low-income communities of color, subjecting them to negative health impacts like headaches, nosebleeds, asthma, cancer, birth defects, and more. Communities who do not have adequate resources to seek relief from fossil fuel pollutants and the climate crisis that this industry has facilitated. I am from one of these communities in Wilmington, California, who is heavily impacted by refineries, diesel truck pollution, extreme heat, power outages, and oil drilling wells that are operated by companies under the CalPERS and CalSTRS investment portfolio. SB 252 is a path forward to securing the dollars of current and future retirees, and it is a path forward to taking power away from the fossil fuel industry and achieving environmental justice for low-income and working communities like mine. The intersections between divestment and the struggle against neighborhood oil drilling are clear as day, which is why, in addition to my advocacy of Senate Bill 252, I stand in solidarity with you all in our shared advocacy for idle well cleanup, oil well liability for health harms, fossil fuel divestment, of course, and holding these polluters accountable to the residents of California. And today we will rally our legislators in the demand to make the polluters pay now. Thank you.
All right, we're going to close with a couple of quick chants. We appreciate all our legislators, and if you got to go, that's okay, but if you can stay, we'd love you to stay. So do what you got to do. Couple of quick chants for the crowd. Give it up for Alonka.
All right, folks, I hope you all know these ones. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. And if we don't get it, shut it down. There you go. And if we don't get it, shut it down. And if we don't get it, shut it down. Hell yeah. And if when our communities are under attack, what do we do? When our communities are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back. Woo! Was there one more? I forgot.
Let's close it out with a make polluters pay.
That's right.
Make polluters pay. 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 Polluters pay.
Let's go get them.
Woo! All right, we're gonna bring it in tight for just one group photo with everybody. If we can get folks in the middle here, Assemblymember Friedman, Assemblymember Hart, everybody who's over here, hold up the signs big.